Memory by Joey Wolf. Processes of memory. There are three processes of memory. Encoding, which is getting sensory information such as hearing or seeing something. Storage, which is pretty self-explanatory. This is the part where memories are stored, and it matters in which system that they're stored in for how long they'll stay there. Next is retrieval. This is the hardest part for most people. This is the process of remembering something. Models of memory. There are three of these also. Information processing model, parallel distributed processing model, and the levels of processing model. The information processing model. What is it? The information processing model is split into three stages. The first one is sensory, which can be split into two subcategories, iconic and echoic. Iconic sensory memory is seeing things. Icon actually means image in Greek, and echoic sensory memory has to do with sounds. Like when somebody's talking to you, you use echoic sensory memory to actually hold a conversation. Sensory memory usually only stays in your head for about 2 to 4 seconds. The second stage is short-term memory, which is made up of selective attention and working memory. There we go. Selective attention is the ability to focus on one stimulus out of all the other sensory output. Like when you're at a party, you hear your name even though it's super loud and you weren't talking to that person. Oops. Working memory is sometimes used interchangeably with short-term memory, even though it isn't entirely correct. The example the book gave for working memory was an office where things are put on your desk. When they're on your desk and you're sorting through them, that's working memory, because that's what it does. It sorts through all the sensory input given to it. When you file them, they become long-term memory, because that's what happens. It gets filed away, and then it's a long-term memory. When people hand you more files, that's sensory memory input. Short-term memory only lasts for about 30 seconds also. Next we move to long-term memory. Long-term memory lasts for, you guessed it, a long time. Not all of your long-term memory stays accessible forever though. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not in there. Long-term memories are usually in these two categories: declarative and non-declarative. Declarative has to do with facts, things that people can know, like the names of planets or how to count. Non-declarative are more like skills, such as riding a bike or tying your shoes. Then for short-term memories, to turn to long-term memories, you have to practice elaborative rehearsal, which is connecting words like if you say mason in French means house, and in English a mason is like a cement thing. So masons make houses, and then it means house. Mason means house. And this is just a little diagram of the information processing model. It comes in, goes to sensory memory. Sensory memory goes to short-term memory, where it sorts through everything. It's the working memory. And then maintenance rehearsals, when you say something over and over to keep it in short-term memory. And then if you practice elaborative rehearsal, it goes to long-term. Next up is the parallel distributed processing model. The parallel distributed processing model is kind of weird. It's simultaneous, which is pretty confusing, but the best way for me to explain it is when you make a new memory, it connects to memories like it. Like, think of a monkey and think of an orangutan and a gorilla. They're all related, right? They're all connected. Well, that's the way the parallel distributed processing model works too. Anything that relates to it, it connects to. And the parallel distributed processing model is closely related to connectionism. Connectionism is the use of artificial neural networks to explain the mental abilities of humans. This is a little diagram of it. say this is connected to this. This is the monkey, this is the orangutan, this is the gorilla. They connect. Now we move on to the levels of processing model. What is it? There are essentially two levels to the levels of processing model. Shallow processing and deep processing. Shallow processing has two forms, structural and phonemic. Structural processing is encoding physical properties of something, like you notice someone is bigger and fit. And phonemic processing is encoding sound. Shallow processing only involves maintenance rehearsal, which again is repeating something over and over to keep it in short-term memory. Deep processing involves semantic processing, which is when we code something through the meaning of the actual word. Now, here's a little diagram. They don't connect at all, so shallow is on its own and deep is on its own. Retrieving long-term memories. To retrieve a long-term memory, you usually have a retrieval cue, such as a word or phrase that makes you try to remember something. There are really only two ways to accomplish remembering something. One is recalling it, and the other is recognizing it. Recalling is when you get asked a question, and you recall the answer. You think back in your head, and you recall the answer. Recognizing is when you recognize an image or a face or a fact, and you match it with one that's already stored in your memory. Well, that's all. These are my sources. Thank you.